Dooney and I in this episode talk about many different things, including her career as a GP, how she used the events that occurred in her life to look a little differently at her role and how she was seeing her clients and able to develop some new ways of helping them to get through their grief through her own experiences. I think a lot of you will really enjoy this episode. Have you ever had one of those gut-wrenching moments where life ground you to your knees and you found yourself asking in despair, why me? This podcast is all about sharing your stories and journeys, from asking why me to declaring this is why me. Discover how ordinary human beings like you and I have found their extraordinary levels of hope, courage, compassion, and provided a new perspective for greater potential and self-empowerment during their darkest defining moment. As a creative artist and coach myself, my guests and I discuss the interconnectedness of emotion and transformation in those moments, and how their actions then seize the opportunity for discovering their unfiltered and authentic voice, and ultimately their life's purpose. I invite you to join me each week as we share insights into how adversity can be turned into a unique advantage. Today's guest is Dooney Atalabi from the UK and the founder of the Drua Academy. Dooney herself experienced the loss of her father and now uses her experience to help others turn their grief into the catalyst for rediscovering abundance in their lives using the TIME or time technique. I'm very interested to hear how this technique works and the circumstances as to how Dooney has turned her adversity into a way to help people going through similar challenges in their lives. Welcome to the WhyMe podcast, Dooney.
Thank you very much, Vera-Lee. Glad to be here. It all came about on one fateful night. My marriage came to an end, and there I was with my two children. And it was quite a difficult situation, and I didn't know what to do. I was so confused. And normally, when I'm confused or I don't know what to do, I normally speak to my father. And when I was thinking, okay, maybe I should call Daddy, I realized and remembered that he had died the month before. And it was just devastating. I cried just so hard. It was unbelievably painful. And as we all know, grief has a way of just taking you down a very interesting rabbit hole. Mm-hmm. At the point, I woke up the next morning on the landing. I don't even know how I got there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And when I woke up, I thought it was a bad dream. But then realized that it wasn't. It happened. So I went over to my children, who were still very little and fast asleep at that time. And I looked at them and I was so scared. There was this little voice in my head saying, "You're a failure. Look at, you can't even keep a home. Marriage is over. You're nothing." And it just kept saying all those horrible things to me. And I was like, I was so confused. I did not know what to do, but there was something in my heart at that time that was so strong. And I just made a promise then to my children that I will be the very best mother to them. And I will make sure that this situation does not negatively impact their lives. But I didn't know how to do that. I think one of the main things I feared, because I'm Catholic, and so the end of your marriage, oh my goodness, that's not particularly great. So there were so many things that were just making me feel so inadequate, so useless. And then, of course, the death of my father was just the thing that just made me particularly devastated.
Yeah.
So,
and was the death of your father, was that something that happened suddenly or was it expected?
It was suddenly. In the morning, around 4 a.m., I got a phone call. I was like, "Oh, how are you, Tola?" And he says, "I'm fine. What are you doing?" And I said, "Oh, I'm in bed, but I was breastfeeding my son." So he said, "Something has happened, and your sister is unable to tell you. So daddy has gone. I know you understand." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And he didn't register.
Yeah.
So he now started talking because we're both, we did our house job together. So that was, so we're able to speak in quite technical terms. Now, obviously, being a medical doctor myself, I'm able to sometimes put my emotions to the side and say, "Oh, right, okay, is that the situation?" And just, deal with it on a very intellectual level.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, I think, was the first way I dealt with it on an intellectual level. It did not register. And
Yeah.
that was a bit interesting from that point. So I think when a month after, with everything that had gone on in between, I wasn't able to go to bury him. I just thought, yeah, that was, I think that when that happened, I was like, oh, and the end of the marriage was a week after his burial, and he died a month before. It was just, it was really a very difficult time. And
Yeah.
so that's what made the pain at that time so intense, because I had made a promise to my children, but I knew I was a right mess. I was feeling so broken.
Yeah.
I started reading, listening to podcasts, doing courses. Now, this is me with two little children, working full-time as a doctor in the emergency department at the time. And I mean, it was, how am I going to do this? I was still
Yeah.
having my own calls. It was really difficult. And at that point, I really didn't have much help around. And obviously, as it is, you have people, friends who would withdraw from you or not want to take sides, or would take sides when the marriage breaks up. It was really a difficult time. And so in the night was my only study time. The nights when I wasn't on call was the only time I could study and, look for answers. It just kept going on. I lost so much weight. I went from a size 12 to a size 6.
Gosh.
I was like skin and bones.
Yeah.
So it was quite interesting. But then one night when I was studying, the penny dropped. I just got like the greatest breakthrough on what to do next, on who to be next, and who. And the moment you know who you're meant to be,
Yes.
everything just starts falling in. I started getting all the answers. I started getting things done. And it moved me from just being that person that had a difficult situation to someone who could not only cope, but thrive and actually do so well. I mean, I'm quite an academic person. I love studies and degrees and accolades. And the way it works is I initially started obviously with 4 letters after my name in terms of my qualifications.
Right.
But by the time I was done, I had almost 10.
Wow.
So I was able to, of course, my hunger for knowledge, my hunger for my qualifications, my specialism and everything, I was able to do that. Financially, I was able to explode. I was able to grow emotionally. I was able to forgive. And that was the greatest gift.
So let's just backtrack a little bit.
Okay.
So your father's died suddenly, and that's a shock for you. And then a month later, you find your marriage ending. So was that a shock as well? Or was that something that you'd been leading up to?
A mixture of both. Mm-hmm. It wasn't particularly a great marriage. I just kept doing everything I could. So here I am going, oh gosh, I mean, Catholics, we don't divorce, and I just gave my all. I did everything. If they said, jump on your head, I jumped on my head. Don't do this, I don't do it. do it like this. So it was more like, yes, okay, everything. And it was a horrible situation. So I think it was more like a final straw.
Right.
And I said, no, this is not happening. This is
Yeah.
just not happening. I can't continue to live in fear.
Yep.
I can't continue to be afraid. I mean, it's a scary thing. So I said, no, I
Yeah.
can't live like this. Not for the rest of my life. Not with my children around. I don't want them to see this or experience this. So that was the end. Yeah.
So that's a very difficult situation to be in, because from the sounds of it, there was so much going on that you may not have had time to fully grieve or even start that grieving process for your father. And then you've got the added loss of your marriage and the grieving that relationship. And as you said, as a Catholic, this is not what we do. You know, we marry for life. And so to be in that situation, you're also then perhaps grieving that difficulty of what your religion says that you should do and what's actually happening in reality. So it sounds very much to me that this whole process of everything sort of tumbling down around you really in a very short period of space, it would be very understandable as to why you've thrown yourself into action. Now, some people would say that that is an avoidance tactic. How would you respond to that in your situation? Because I heard those words about how you found your who, and we're going to talk about that in a moment because that is so important in this journey. But yeah, I know that some of the listeners are going to be wondering about that, because by the sounds of it, you did an awful lot amidst all the chaos.
When you're faced with adversity, when you're faced with a difficult situation, you're overwhelmed with the emotions that come with it. It's best most times to face it. There's nowhere to run. It's just like you're right in the heart of the volcano and it's erupting. There's nowhere to run. Being able to seek the answers, which I think was a good approach, a great way to look for a way forward, find that way, thrive, and now help people in my different roles to do the same.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm very much the same myself. I know that in the midst of losing my marriage, which was my choice because of domestic violence, and then all the chaos that was going around amidst that for myself and my young child, he was very young as well, that I also stepped into action. And I had a lot of people that thought that I was using it as an avoidance technique as well. But I love the way that you so eloquently explained that it's, you know, you're in the middle of the volcano and you need to take action and you need to deal with the situation and facing it head on and rediscovering who you are after that grief and through that process is so key to finding your why, isn't it? And it sounds like you really went all into that journey in reconnecting to your core self and reassessing where you wanted to go in your life and working out how you're going to do that and what your why is and how you're going to serve other people. So tell us what happened then.
So by the time I finished, I discovered my why. I continued my journey, became a family doctor after specializing, started to teach. Obviously, you meet people along the way, family, friends, clients, patients. They have this difficult situation. They're grieving a loss of someone or something. While I'm a family doctor, and sometimes in the UK especially, we see patients 10-minute consultations and you're out of the room. So
wow, that's quick.
This quick. I decided I wanted to do it differently.
Yeah.
Because someone comes to you with a headache, it's not because primarily there's something wrong in the head. Yeah. Yes, maybe there might be a tumor. Maybe there might be some other physical cause in the head. But when you look deeper, there is always some underlying thing, social and psychological, that contributes either to the headache or to the effect the headache has on the person.
Yeah.
And that's the approach I always wanted with every single patient I saw. And when, of course, I delved into it, it took a bit longer, but we got great results. So we uncovered many things that people were suffering because of loss, because of grief. And I started using the skills and the tactics that I'd picked up with my own personal experience to help them. And it was yielding results. And I was like, wow, that's awesome. And I just continued and offered that to friends and family and acquaintances and people I met along the way. When the time came for me, it just kept coming to me, you need to help more people. I was like, yes, I'm helping more people. And there I was thinking, oh, well, yeah, okay, maybe I'll write a book. And because I'm so introverted, I hide behind my books and just, hello, and I'm so quiet. So I said, maybe I'll write a book. And says, no. So there was this day in the morning, I was doing my morning devotion, and it had been coming to me for a while. And this part of the Bible where I was reading from was about the talents, and how the king had given 5 talents and 1 talent to his 3 servants. And the other first 2 had traded theirs and gotten more and were given a feedback. The third one said, Lord, you gave me 1 talent. I was afraid. And so I went to hide it. But here it is. I've dug it up. Here you go. That's the talent you gave me.
Wow.
And the response of the king was, you wicked servant. When I read that part of what the servant said, I said, oh my God, I am sorry, because you have given me this talent and you've told me to help people with this talent. But I know I am afraid, and I still am afraid, and I'm trying to hide it. I'm not going to do that anymore. And that's when I went with social media and putting myself beyond that fear to help more people. And oh my goodness, it has helped people. People who I don't know from all over the globe have reached out. Even with COVID and what's happening, it is very difficult because a pandemic, you lose yourself, your freedom, your job, your loved ones, and it's quite a difficult situation. And this is a great time. People need the ability not just to move away from the grief, but just to use that grief to make an abundant life. Because we all know, I mean, I still miss my father.
Yeah.
A couple of weeks ago, I celebrated his anniversary of his passing. I still occasionally remember some things we did together. So anytime you talk about Star Wars, for example, oh my goodness, I remember my dad, because he taught us, he brought us into the Star Wars line.
Right.
And when I see a chessboard, because he was a chess champion, I remember him. So yes, we still feel the loss, but what are you doing with that loss? How are you using that grief? And those are the techniques that we use in helping people.
That is wonderful. And as you're explaining, it comes down to a choice, doesn't it? We have a choice as to everybody needs to go through the stages of grief, and we all need to do that in our own way, in our own time. However, we get to a point where we have a choice. How long are we going to let that stop our forward movement in life? And how do these time techniques, how did they come about for yourself, and how do they work and how do they help people?
So basically, the time techniques stands for a transformational, inspirational, motivational, and empowering technique.
Fantastic.
Now, from that way the time techniques work, I also use certain skills and tools to help people use the 24 hours we have in a day to help you by using several hacks. So we all know that we are not just one being. We're not just body. As human beings, we've got our spirit, our soul, our body, and our minds. And these all need to be in excellent states. Now, when you have a loss and you're grieving, most of the time they are all at low levels. Now, while everybody sees your body, oh, you haven't brushed your teeth, or you haven't gotten out of bed, or you haven't tidied up, maybe your house is looking like a hurricane went through it. Those are the things that people see. They might see you a bit sad and things like that, but you need to, it's that overall care in spite of grieving. So yes, you will still be grieving, but it's those little hacks you can do with minimal efforts. For example, I'll give you an example. We all know how important hydration is for the body, just from the
Yes.
point of view of the body. What I tend to teach people in terms of getting hydration, because we always forget about it, is have a bottle beside your bed. The moment you wake up, if you're the one that loves the snooze button, that's fine. Nobody's judging. Grab that bottle, put it close to your mouth, and just start to suck until you hear the straw going like the bottle is empty. So that's, you don't need so much effort to do that. But at the end of the day, you've got quite a good hydration because you've lost quite a lot of insensible water loss overnight. That's from the physical point. The second point is, of course, taking care of the soul, which means emotionally. Now, like I mentioned earlier, the main thing that brought that liberation moment was the ability to forgive.
Yeah.
I know we all talk about forgiving, and it's not easy sometimes, especially if you've been hurt so badly. There are certain things that you can do that can make that process easier, and it doesn't take time. So I'm very mindful because I knew at that point I was such a busy person with my work, for working full time. So my techniques are basically the techniques that don't take a lot of time and don't really need you to be massively motivated all the time to do them. So they will come even in your less motivated states.
Right.
And you'll be able to still do them and live that abundance of life.
Yeah. So even in those days where people are struggling to get out of bed, they don't feel motivated at all, basically feeling like they just can't deal with the world on those days, they can still apply some of these techniques to help themselves out of that state.
Yes.
Yeah, that is so important. And I love your focus on simplicity, because when we look at grief, it's a very complex emotion because there are often many elements to it. And as you explained earlier, when someone comes in with a headache, there's often underlying reasons for that are perhaps not related to something physical in the head. And certainly going through grief and strong emotions, to use that example, quite often gives people really bad headaches and that feeling of being wiped out for the day. And I love the fact that you're taking a very complex situation and applying simple techniques that actually work to help people, that everyone can implement these things to help themselves on those days and have a better opportunity to change that state where they essentially lose the whole day, to actually again have that opportunity to reconnect to who they are and use those emotions in a different way to benefit them.
Yes.
It takes a lot. I mean, you are a doctor, you were working on call, you were doing all this study, you had 2 young children. That takes an awful lot of effort and determination, and it also takes a lot of courage. And like you said, stepping out online when you're an introvert, even that, there's a lot of fear in that to have to work through. I'm curious to know how long that process took you, because some people can make a decision one day and then they're good to go, but most of us are not like that. For most of us, this takes a bit of time. So how much sort of time did this take you to work out that process and actually get started and take that step into that online environment?
I think it took a few weeks to a month or so. This is your why. This is why you're doing it, because people need to see you. People need to feel you. People need to experience that. And I was like, okay. One particular day I said, you know what? It was the first day of the month, and I was like, I am doing this. I am going to help people, come what may, because my understanding of adversity is not when you're facing fear and you're facing a difficult situation. The courage is not the absence of fear. It is the presence of fear, but you do it anyway.
Correct.
And that is what I thought, like, I'm going to do this anyway. My middle name is Abiyiwa, which means this person is born into abundance.
Oh, I love it.
And thank you. And so that abundance has always been with me, because the thing about it is most times where I come from, you're named on a few days, maybe 7 days, if you're a twin, on maybe the 8th day. So you don't have a name at birth.
Okay.
You are given a name that usually by the time they interpret it is a full sentence or paragraph, depending.
Wow. So is that they sort of take that time for you to grow, like, to work out what your name is, to get a feel of you as a person, when you're brought into this world?
I guess that's the principle behind. Sometimes they'll have ideas of different names and they just go, oh, this is the name that is resonating with maybe the energy the child is emitting, or something happening in this, maybe in the family environment or something like that. So they get that vibe for the name. My name Duni means sweet to have, so it's Omoduni, which means it's sweet to have a child, but middle name about the abundance. And it just spoke to me. And that's exactly what the desert rose does. We all know the desert rose. It's so beautiful when you see it. I mean, you see an expanse of sandy land and you're like, oh, there's nothing that would grow it there. And then you see this beautiful desert rose.
Yeah.
So that desert rose leading to abundance. That's where Drew has come from.
Wow. So powerful, Dooney. So powerful. I love it. And I love that you have just embodied everything about that process and that trust. Trust is something that comes up a lot in these interviews on this series. It's a recurring theme because it is so important to be able to trust yourself and trust the process when dealing with such difficult emotions and the chaos of life, and to be able to sit with yourself and trust who you are and that you know your purpose is so powerful. And even across the world, I can feel such a servant energy from you, in that you are putting your own fear and needs, that you're walking through that for the purpose of helping so many others who are struggling, and you have a way to help them, and that is beautiful.
Thank you.
I thank you so much for sharing it here today. I know that a lot of the listeners are going to be able to relate in one way or another. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It is a great privilege, and it's something that we need to remember. Like Tony Robbins says, life is not happening to me, it happens for me.
Yes.
I was speaking with a mentor the other day, well, not recently, when a few years ago, and I said, I'm happy that I went through what I went through. And he says, there's no reason why anybody needs to be abused. And I was like, no, I'm glad I was. I'm glad I did, because it has made me a better person, a better doctor, a better student, a better teacher, a better mom, a better human being. I don't think I would have been the best version of myself. I'm still improving. I'm improving every single moment, but I don't think I would be at this level if I didn't go through that. So yes, it happened for my own good, not any other way.
Wow, such an epiphany and such a defining moment to come to that realization, and now to be stepping into that and living that every day. I honor your effort and I honor your knowledge and sharing that experience with others to also help them to discover their own who and why. And that is exactly what this podcast is about. It's called the WhyMe series because it's about using adversity to some form of advantage. And sometimes when people hear that, from adversity to advantage, they sort of go, whoa, hang on a minute. Like, when can that situation ever be considered good? And then when I explain to them, it's actually not about the situation, it's about using what's happened to have that opportunity. Like you said, the very famous now Tony Robbins quote, life is not happening to me, it's happening for me. And it's exactly the same event, exactly the same environment. And what changes is your perspective. And if you change your perspective and you see that opportunity to learn from that experience, to integrate that experience into, like you said, making the best version of yourself. And I love that you say you're still doing this every day, because we all are. That is a lifelong pursuit. That is, I believe, one of the reasons we are here, to discover how amazing each of us can be and will be and is when we operate in that capacity of striving to be the best, most authentic version of ourselves. And I love that you are helping so many people to achieve that through their grief and to see that different perspective and that opportunity. That is a beautiful offering that you are allowing people to discover.
Yes. And I think that people being able to realize that the intention of our Maker is for us to live a life of abundance.
Yes.
Not to live in pain or scarcity.
Yes.
I mean, look at all the very popular people that have achieved a lot. The thing they had in common was adversity.
That's right. That's right. And some people who, I think, again, it might have been Tony Robbins. I know a lot of people have said, you don't grow without the adversity. One of the key things that Junie talks about during this episode is the theme of being understood, being listened to, and having someone who is willing to take a little extra time to look at what's going on underneath the physical symptoms. At the heart of a lot of this episode is knowing who you are and what your purpose is in life, and using that knowledge to step into your true potential. We are not always aware of the beliefs and limiting behaviours that we are doing, stopping ourselves from achieving that full potential. We are not always aware of why our body is reacting the way it is in response to the internal dialogue that is going through our head. This is why it is so important to find somebody who can mentor or coach you that understands where you've come from and where you are heading, to give you the tools that you need to succeed in your life. Let's get back to the interview. And I often relate it to being a creative person. I relate it to light and shadow.
Yes.
Without the shadow, all we have is light. We have no form, we have no substance, we have nothing. And the same if it's all shadow. Whereas when we realize that they work together, that the shadow allows us to see the light and vice versa, and it allows us to see shape and form and have a different perspective, and that when the light moves around, so will the shadow. It's like a little dance of life. And that when we have that perspective and we embrace it, and as you said so beautifully, courage is not about not feeling the fear. It's about the fear being there and stepping through it and doing it anyway. And when we learn to take that dance, we have so much potential inside us, and it just unlocks that and releases it. And I love the way that you're doing that.
Thank you. You're doing a great job with empowering people through this podcast as well. I admire that a great deal. And I know that during this time, the time when I was going through my difficult moments, podcast was also another way where I got all the inspiration and the tools to get through. So you're doing a great job. I'm really, really grateful to you for this.
Thank you so much. You know, it's interesting because I've only started this podcast series recently, but it was always something I wanted to do. And my journey of the WhyMe movement started many, many years ago when I was at my defining moments. And I've had a number of very impacting, defining moments in my life. And each time I was reminded, Vera, you are here for a purpose. You know who you are. You know your why. You just need to work out the how. And recently I've worked out the how, and I'm fully stepping into that. I'm taking uncomfortable action. And the beautiful souls like yourself that I am meeting through this experience, I have always said everybody has a story if we're willing to listen. And I truly believe that. And I know that by sharing stories like yours, someone and many someones are going to be touched and inspired and feel that moment themselves of realization that they can make a difference in their life and in other people's lives. I think it's also important for people to hear someone like yourself with breaking those stereotypes. A lot of people think that people who are going through tough times in their lives are people of the lower socioeconomic class. And one of the ways that I like to try and dispel that is by sharing stories of anybody and everybody who has a story to share that can inspire others. And found myself in a domestic violence situation. And I've got a bachelor's degree and everything. I've been to university. I'm a pretty intelligent person. And so people used to say things to me like, well, how did you end up in that situation? You're smart, but,
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what happened. I mean, I'm like, my goodness, this is strange. I mean, I thought this happened to people who didn't go to school. I went to school. I'm a doctor. I mean, exactly. You just hit the nail on the head. And I just realized adversity, domestic abuse doesn't respect anybody. I mean, when I was going through this difficult situation, I had a supportive supervisor at work.
Good.
Who herself went through domestic violence, and I'm like, oh my God. So and there's several, and they're like, oh yeah, me too. There was a kind of silent me too. I understand what you're going through, but you're very, very courageous. And they go, oh yeah, I wish I had done that 14 years ago. People with their different stories, and I was like, okay, because I was confused. Did I do the right thing? Did I not?
Yeah.
Have I just made my life worse? And because I had such a triangular life. My life was home, school, church. So I was a proper church girl. Yeah. Home, school, church. And I was like, oh my God, I won't be able to go to church. I won't be able to receive communion anymore. Oh my God, my life is over.
Yeah. So how did you get through that?
So basically what I did was I said, well, Lord, I did everything. I mean, I did everything. When my father died, I was getting ready. Okay, I heard the news, they fixed the date, and I was told I wasn't allowed to do anything, really. And so it's a situation of, if you go, don't bother coming back. That's what I was told. And I was like, I can't go. I've got 2 children. Because I can't, if you're telling me if I go, I should not bother coming back, that means I'm not going to be able to see my 2 children. I'm like, oh my God. And so it was. And then I was like, you know what? I think at this point, and of course I spoke with my priest, and I was like, this is what I'm going through. I don't know. He said that was not a marriage. I was like, okay, thank you, Father.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Thank you, So that was encouraging. So the church, the really supported, because that was my main fear. And then when I finished all my basic stuff, I decided to go on a pilgrimage, personal pilgrimage to Rome.
Wow.
When I got there, I had a conversation at the Basilica, actually, with one of the priests. I was like, just to get things sorted. And he's like, no, there is a process. So when you get back, do this and do that. And I was like, oh, I'm
Relief.
free. I'm happy. Yes, I went there and I got the information. And I just said, wow, this is fantastic. And yes, so I'm continuing to be a very active member in my church community, in my own my personal community, and being able to help people. So I know that many times when people say they've been through a difficult situation, they want to go into the story of it and relieve it, and it brings up all kinds of emotions. I look at it and say, well, yes, it's good to go into the details of it, but what are you using the details to do? What are you using that pain that you felt then to do? What are you using that? Are you going to just wallow in the pain, or are you going to use it to create something extraordinary in your life, in the lives of the people around you? And I'm particularly passionate about children. So people who have experienced a loss, but they've got little ones that they need to care for. Because yes, you say I have to be strong for my children, but like they say, you can't be in an airplane and it's crashing and the oxygen mask comes on and you're putting someone else's first. No, you put yours on first, and that's why the importance is you care for yourself first, and then you care for the people that are dependent on you. And it's really very important to be able to do that, because we're going to experience loss. And even then, what do you do at every given time? And grief doesn't have a timeline, unfortunately. And so you think, oh yeah, I've finished grieving. It's been 1 year or 2 years. Yeah, let's get on. And unfortunately, it's not like that. It's more like you could be fine today, and then tomorrow you remember that, and
Yeah, I think that's so true. Grief doesn't have any set timeline, and I don't know if it really ever ends. And I think that we get better, or we work out different ways of accepting that as time goes by. And it doesn't mean that we are not missing that person as much. It just means that we've learned how to integrate that and accept it and know that we miss that person and be less halted in our life by that grief and more able to integrate it into remembering and still being able to function, so it doesn't grind us to a halt as often. But it's important to know that those emotions need to be faced, a bit like when you're talking about fear, isn't it? And it's still so important to not stuff that down, because when we stuff it down, that's when we get those physical manifestations occurring, the headaches and the belly aches. And, I'd love to know your opinion of chronic illness with people who've gone through a lot of trauma and grief.
Oh, yes. I personally think on the line, you can imagine an iceberg. That underlying big mass is more psychosocial than anything else. I mean, I see patients come in with IBS and fibromyalgia and all the other chronic illnesses, even cancer. Lots of research are beginning to show that there is a very strong element of the psychosocial in those conditions. And that's why I'm trying not to move too much into, right, oh, you've got a headache, blah, blah, blah. Here's your prescription. Here you go. You're feeling depressed, blah, blah, blah. Here's some serotonin, sertraline. Here you go. Yeah, I don't, that's not the solution.
Yeah.
You need to address that base. And it's such a big base. And all that is so important to address. And being able to let go is a very important thing. But unfortunately, it can be difficult.
Mm.
There was one of the very great books I listened to that was called The Art of Letting Go. That was really great, and it's something I would recommend to people to read. But yeah.
Wonderful. I will include that in the podcast so that people know. I have heard of that book. I haven't managed to read it yet myself. So I will add that to my very quickly growing list.
Yeah.
That is, I have about 6 or 7 questions I alternate with my guests, and the book that's impacted them the most is one of those questions. My bucket list and things that I want to do is growing all the time. People like yourself that are sharing these beautiful insights, books that are so impactful on our lives. And yeah, so thank you for sharing that. I'll make sure that gets in.
Thank you.
I also wanted to ask you, you were saying how, the system over there is very short appointments for people to see. And, you don't just want to dismiss people and give them a pill that is not going to solve their issues, their underlying issues. So how do you approach that? I mean, do you offer longer consults? Do you refer them on to other people? How does that work for you?
So for me, I decided I did not want to be a salaried doctor. So they call the different types of ways you offer your service. Either you're with one practice and that practice you work with the practice maybe several sessions in a week. Now there you comply with all the rules that they have and you do everything. You have to apply for holidays and things like that. I didn't want that. I wanted to be able to work on my own terms. If I wanted to see someone for 30 minutes, I will be able to see them. If I wanted to see someone for 15 minutes, I would be able to see them. I have my appointments booked. So I kind of offer a sessional role to practices. And I have my sessions booked. They say, oh, no, it's 10 minutes appointment. I'm like, okay, fine. Give me the 10 minutes. But I want you to put blocks in between. So after every 3 patients, I get a block. Now, I'm not being paid for that block. It's my time, but I'm using it so that I don't run over in case there's a patient that needed more time. I still do run over, but I'm able to kind of say, you know what, come back and we'll discuss this. I give them a plan. I document so that even if it's not me that sees them next, someone has got to see them and there is a plan on a very easy approach. And I give them very easy to implement things that they can do while they're waiting for that next appointment, if I'm unable to kind of address the main issue in that consultation. So yes, I really enjoy the fact that I can do that. And it gives me a lot of satisfaction, really, because sometimes I can stay almost 3 hours after the end of work, getting all that sorted. It can be draining, but it's fulfilling. Yeah. And that's when I give it, I'm able to see and help 30 people today. But what if you were on the global stage and you're able to help even more?
Yeah.
And that was
Yeah, that's so good. And look, we need more doctors like yourself who understand the importance of looking in further, not just dismissing the surface issues that come out. It's so important. And I also love the way that you were talking about what are you going to do with those feelings and emotions.
I think what you're doing is fantastic. It's really great. It's what people really need. It's unbelievable the number of people suffering. There is a saying where I'm from, it says the lots of lizards are crawling around, but you don't know the one that has got tummy ache.
Yeah.
Everyone is moving about. You don't know what problem they're carrying. And when you listen, which is what I do most of the time with my work, is amazing the amount of things people have been through. And you just go, how is this person walking? Or how is this person able to wake up? And I think you see many extraordinary people, but then sometimes it gets them really, really down. And that's at that point you go, you know what? There is an easy way because when you're taking care of yourself, in that very low moment, you're unable to get out of your bed. But then while you're laid there, you're able to hydrate, you're able to do this, care for your body, care for your spirit, care for your soul. Even as you're lying in bed or not feeling like you want to get up, you start to get a bit of energy. You start to get that thing that will make you go, I am a gladiator, I can do this, and it's amazing. Yeah. And that's exactly what I'm hoping to get many people to see, because we need to be able to move ourselves from that to that.
Oh, yes.
And, yeah.
Yes, we absolutely do.
I will show you something, because obviously I had to ask permission for every single thing, but there was one thing, because my parents are from two different tribes, and it's very difficult. We all know the way one tribe or one race might just not want to associate with the other, and that's the way it is. I think it's just a human thing. But my father was just so open-minded and so wonderful, and so was my mom, that from two different tribes, they decided to come together, and they were married for over 30 years before he passed on.
Wow.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah. So when I was going to get married, he said, well, I have to dress in where my mom's from, her tribal outfit, because my mom is a princess of the Benin Kingdom. And so I said, yeah, sure. So I told my would-be husband, oh, yes. So I'll come out in this, and then I'll go back and I'll change, and I'll come in the outfit that we're wearing together. It's like, never. I'm like, So I told my dad, well, I wouldn't do it. He said, why? Why not? And I told him what happened. And he says, you know what? We'll take a picture. And so we did. Beautiful. And I'll show you what that picture was. I'll show you in a minute.
Please.
I have, in my home, I have made a big copy of it. Well, I made it. So this is it.
Oh.
So it's a full, because he told me I can't change on that day.
Yeah.
And I said, okay. And my father said, you go and get this. So throughout the ceremony, I had my full-length picture there, and I was there in the outfit that they said I could wear.
Oh, beautiful. And I love the way that you both worked out a way to make it still happen.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it was just like, oh my God. So every time I look at it and I go, yes, I am Uwa.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So powerful. So powerful. And this is what I teach my clients is the power of association, and the power of proximity. And that's why I encourage people, in whatever shape and form works for them, to have things around them that help to ground and help to, keep that association with those good memories and those good emotions and those beautiful things that might not mean much to some other people because they won't know the story, but to us, they mean everything.
Yes.
That's so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that with me. So I thank you so much for being my guest today. And I would like to let our listeners know how to get in touch with you if they would like to work with you and know more about your systems.
Okay. Yes. Oh, thank you very much for that. I'm on all social media platforms. So I'm on Facebook as Drua Talby, on Instagram as Drua2002, Twitter as Drua8, and I'm on LinkedIn. And also I've got a website as well, Drua Academy. So it's where you can get lots of information, sign up for newsletters, get blog posts, sign up for coachings. And yes, we do offer a lot of support and packages to help you through this, through any adversity, any grieving situations, so that you are empowered to live that abundant life that you were made to and you deserve to live.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And I will make sure that those links are in the description for our listeners to go and be able to contact you should they wish.
Awesome.
Wonderful.
Thank you very much, Vera.
You're welcome.
In my experience and talking to many friends and colleagues throughout the years, one thing that we have all come to the same conclusion about is that you often get to a certain point in your life where you really start questioning what it is that you stand for. What is it that really makes you happy? And what do you really want to get out of this life? What legacy do you want to leave? And underpinning all of that is the realization of who you are now and who you want to be. Having clarity in these areas helps you to step into your true potential. And so if you would like the opportunity for a free discovery session with myself to see if mentoring and coaching would help you so that you can really step into your true potential, you can do so at WhyMeMovement.com. You will also find there that you can subscribe to the newsletter to keep up to date with all the news, special offers, and products as they are released, as well as some behind-the-scenes information about some of our wonderful guests and who you can look forward to listening to in the upcoming episodes. Please remember, if you enjoy this content, to rate and subscribe. And, of course, share along with your friends in social media and let them know what a fantastic podcast this is so that they too can enjoy this content that we bring to you for free.